When I applied to graduate school, I received really simple advice on how to choose an advisor. I was told to go ahead and find professors whose work was interesting to me and to find professors who were doing research that was similar to my own. That was it. I didn't get any conversations about the importance of their advising style, about recognizing power dynamics, about the differences in professorial titles and rankings. I didn't get a conversation about communication styles, about the impact of gatekeeping, and about the fact that these are individuals that are going to play a role in your career, not just in the short term, but potentially in the long haul too. And so for today, I'm going to be tackling the topic of how to find the right thesis or dissertation advisor. And I'm going to explore it through different scenarios. And I'm going to give you a couple of different things to consider beyond just thinking about their research. And when I went back to my archive, I was actually really surprised that I hadn't covered this topic. I have over 350 episodes right now. And the last time I talked about this was episode 57 on how to secure a faculty mentor. That episode was geared towards undergrads finding mentors. This episode is for anyone who is considering going to graduate school or already is in graduate school and is considering finding a new advisor. So listen in. It's going to be a really popular topic. I already know I'm going to send it to several people, including the person who requested this episode. So let's get to it. Welcome to the award-winning Grad School Femtoring Podcast, the place for first-gen BIPOCs to listen in on inclusive grad school stories and learn about personal development and productivity tips. This is Doctora Yvette Martinez-Vu, a certified coach, consultant, and author, and I will be serving as your femtor, providing you with insider knowledge to help you reach your personal and professional goals. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. This is your host, Doctora Yvette. I mentioned at the end of my intro that this episode was a requested topic, so I want to shout out the listener who requested this episode. Her name is Pruthavi. Shout out to you. I appreciate you for bringing it up, for reaching out to me and asking for this episode. And like I mentioned earlier, I was really surprised that I hadn't talked about it. And I think it came as a surprise because it is a topic that comes up in my one-on-one coaching sessions. And because a lot of my topics overlap between my one-on-one coaching, my group coaching, and the podcast, sometimes I forget what I have and haven't covered. And so I went back and I thought to myself, well, when else have I tackled the topics of working with advisors? And aside from episode 57 on finding a faculty mentor, I also talked about how to deal with a toxic advisor in episode 188. And I even talked about way earlier on in episode 48 on how to establish a good relationship with your advisor. So I have been talking about this topic of what it's like to work with someone else. And it's very similar to working with supervisors or working with someone else who is in a mentoring role. But this one in particular, I thought was important to have, especially if you're in one of two scenarios. So the two scenarios I'm covering today are if you're applying to grad school and don't yet know the advisor or the campus that you're applying to, but you're trying to explore your options for people to work with. And then the second scenario is, let's say you're already a grad student, you're already familiar with your campus and your department, but you are tasked with a very difficult circumstance of having to switch advisors. I've supported grad students in going through this transition. I know it's very tricky. A lot of politics come up. And so I'll walk you through that process and things to explore if you're considering changing advisors. So the first thing I want to mention when I think about advisors is that Well, one thing I say is that no one person can do all things, right? An advisor isn't going to be perfect, but they do have to offer support. And this individual can make or break your experience in graduate school, and they can represent a system of support. It's not your only form of support, but it's a very big form of support in your grad school experience. Why are they a system of support? Because there's a lot of things about how you work with them that can either help you or harm you. That includes how they communicate, how they offer feedback, how they view you and treat you in terms of level of respect and power dynamics, to what extent they do or don't gatekeep, to what extent they provide access to funding, opportunities, or even have your back and protect you against other harmful professors or scholars. And so this is really important. It matters a lot. It's a big deal. You could make the argument that finding the right advisor is one of the most important, if not the single most important thing to consider when you're applying to graduate school. It is really important. Even if it's not the most important thing to you, it should be at the top of your non-negotiables because you're going to have a long-term relationship with this person, whether it's for 2 or 3 years in your master's program, or 5, 6, 7 years in your PhD program, and even beyond if you expect this person to be writing you letters of recommendation or to serve as a reference for future jobs. So let's get straight into scenario one. You are applying to grad school and you're exploring your options of who to work with. Here, you might not have access to as much information as if you're in that department already, but you can definitely gather some patterns. You can definitely see what you can find. And based on the information that's accessible to you, either online or through talking to some people, you want to ask yourself, can this person reasonably support me given what I need in this graduate program? And then other things to consider are, of course, the research is important. I don't want to not mention that, right? So that was a thing that I was told when I was an undergrad applying to graduate school. And I was told that because it is important. So you can take a look at the areas that they study, if they interest you, if their methods align with your own. Do they work with students who are doing similar work or who are pursuing similar career paths? How supportive are they of their students? Do they support their students in publishing? Do they co-author with them? How do they sponsor their students in the future? Then, aside from research and methods, I want you to think about how they communicate and even what can you gather about their personality. Are they someone that's very clear cut to the point, or are they more abstract? Are they using a lot of jargon, or do they talk to you in a way that is more conversational? Do they respond thoughtfully, or are they in a rush or maybe vague? Are they curious about you, about who you are as a person, as a scholar, or do they only care about what you produce, what you publish, what you do? And it may be hard to find this on your own by doing a quick online search. So I highly recommend, if you can, to talk to graduate students in the programs that you are considering applying to, and to even reach out to this individual, the top professor that you want to work with at that institution, and to schedule a call to get to know them. It is completely normal to do this. I highly recommend it because there's nothing like meeting with someone to help you to get a sense of whether or not you have a good rapport with this person, whether or not their personality gels or meshes or goes well with yours, whether or not they communicate in a way that's going to work for you. So research is one thing, communication style is another. Of course, another thing is feedback, because this is the person that's going to help you to develop as a scholar and as a professional. You can find out again from grad students, or even by asking them. You can ask them what type of feedback do they offer, and in what ways they support students through the process of working on their research and their writing. Some professors are output oriented, so they're more hands off. They want you to just go to them when you have a fully polished draft of something. Others are more process oriented, they're more hands on. They're willing to work with you through the messy middle, through outlining, brainstorming, ideating, writing, again, messy writing that's not clear or polished. So you want to find out if they are one or the other. Are they more hands on? Are they more hands off? This is especially helpful because some of us need extra help. So if you know you're going to need that extra assistance, find out if you're going to be able to get that from your advisor. And if not, that could work if you get that support elsewhere. And so that's where the work of writing coaches, or that's where the work of tutors, or even if there's a writing center, that could help to substitute in a way that kind of support. But some folks get that from their advisors. Please know that. Another thing that's really important is it has to do with kindness and respect. So this is their character traits. One thing that, again, I wish I would have been told to prioritize is to work with someone who was kind and work with someone who was respectful. Not everybody will respect you or be kind to you in graduate school. And so kindness means that they treat you well and that they treat you as a colleague in training, but they still respect you and treat you well. They are acknowledging of your life constraints. They don't make it mean something personal or hold it against you. They provide feedback constructively without harming you or humiliating you or putting you down. This is a bit harder to find out, and this is where you can talk to other people who have worked with them to get this information. And then, of course, you want to find out, what is their track record? How have they mentored others in the past? How do they support people beyond grad school? Where are their former students now? Do they stay in touch with their former students? Do their former students pursue diverse career paths? Because some advisors will only support you and be available to you and write letters of rec for you if you pursue an academic pathway. And if you veer off of that pathway, they will no longer have a relationship with you. So find that out. Do they maintain relationships with their students beyond graduation? Those are my main pointers for someone who is looking at different professors that they'd like to work with when they're applying to grad school. And again, a lot of this involves both doing your online searches, but also talking to people, talking to grad students and talking to the professors themselves.
Hello, my name is Heidi de la Cruz, the host of the two-time award-winning podcast, The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants. The show is all about sharing stories of immigrants. We explore their first memory of the U.S., how life was back home, the cultural shocks that they experienced once they first moved here, if they were able to visit their home country, how that experience was, and then lastly, what does the American dream mean to them? So come along as we listen to the stories of what makes this nation so great, the diversity and melting pot of all the people. You can listen to episodes every Tuesday on Apple, Spotify, or you can watch on YouTube. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Now, if you are in the scenario where you're already in grad school, you're changing advisors, you are coming in with a lot more information, and you're coming in with a strong sense of what has not worked. This works in your favor in that you have more clarity and you have a better sense of what you're looking for. Start there. Start with stepping back, reflecting, and assessing what didn't work with your current advisor. What needs of yours went unmet? And then make sure that you start to not just focus on one-time issues, but what were the recurring patterns and how can you avoid those recurring patterns in the future? And again, I want to reify that there's no such thing as a perfect advisor and no one advisor can do it all for you. That's why a lot of us have multiple mentors at once. But you don't want to recreate the same scenario that didn't work last time. So we want to avoid the same issues by reflecting and identifying what they were and seeing how you can avoid that in the future. You avoid that by figuring out what your core support needs are. Maybe you started out thinking the core support needs were I need someone doing the work that I want to do on a similar topic with similar methods, and that was it. Or maybe you even thought, I just want to work with someone who looks and sounds like me. And then you started working with them and you realize I cannot rely on that alone because even if they look and sound like me, we are not the same person and we do not work well. That sometimes happens. So figure out what is it. Do you need clear communication? Do you need consistent communication? Is it responsiveness? Is it reliability? Is it timely feedback? Is it emotional and psychological safety and respect? Again, going back to the kindness and respect piece. Is it you want to work with someone who is new and excited to support you and invested in working with you because you're one of their first students? Or maybe you want to work with someone who is established, has been around in the department, and is very well versed with departmental milestones and processes and can walk you through that confidently. Figure out what your top priorities are. Narrow this down to your top 3 to 5 priorities. And then from there, figure out who you can talk to. So start talking, setting up meetings with professors to ask them these questions around their communication style, around their advising style, around how they provide feedback, around how they support their students beyond graduate school, etc. If we're going back to thinking about specific questions related to the different areas like research, communication, feedback, and kindness, mentorship, track record, etc., your questions are slightly different from the ones that I mentioned earlier. Your questions are about how will they support my current direction? Will they even support it? Will they allow for my intellectual evolution, or will they want me to stick to just one way, one topic, one method? Do I currently need regular check-ins and consistent written feedback? Does their style support how I work? Does it support my brain? Does it support my executive functioning? Does it support my circumstances? When it comes to the feedback, maybe you already have worked with this person, but in a different capacity. Maybe you've taken a class with them and ask yourself, did I leave my class sessions with them feeling clearer or more confused? Is the feedback they provide actionable or vague? If you haven't worked with them in any way, talk to your peers, talk to your colleagues, talk to other grad students, ask them, how is their feedback? What type of feedback do they provide? Maybe they provide no feedback, and that's a problem. Maybe they provide too much feedback, and that's a problem. Maybe they can provide feedback in one area, but not in all areas. And again, no one person is perfect. So just figure out which are the priorities for you so that you can then make sure that they can support you in most of your top priority areas. Ask yourself, are they going to support your pace? Are they going to support your timeline? Are they going to respect you no matter what things come up for you? Because especially when you're a current grad student, that's when you realize that life happens in grad school. Hiccups happen. Health stuff sometimes comes up. There's so many things that can come up because you're there for a while, especially in a PhD program. So you want to know that you're going to be working with someone who is going to support you, even with those obstacles that may come up. And you want to find out actually, how do they handle conflict? How do they handle mistakes? Do they own up to it or not? How do they respond when students fall behind? That's a big question to ask because chances are you may already be feeling behind because you're having to start over in a sense because you're looking for a new advisor. So find that out. You can ask them directly or you can ask another student that has had that experience. And that's actually where the real fit shows up, when you find out how do they work with students who have different timelines, who have different circumstances, or whose timeline has slowed down because of a number of different reasons. Of course, ask around. How have they advised other students? How have they advised those with longer or non-traditional timelines? Do they advocate? So sometimes you're working with someone and you want to make sure that they can advocate for you, because maybe the former advisor is still part of the picture. Maybe they're still going to be on your committee. Maybe they're still just going to be around. Maybe there's still someone that you have to cite because their work is similar to yours. So no matter the circumstance, maybe that other person is still not completely out of the picture. And so you want to have an advisor who is going to be advocating for you no matter what happens. So again, make sure you have these conversations. Usually these are like the hush hush conversations that you have behind closed doors with peers. So find out who has worked with them, who hasn't worked with them, and why. How have they worked with students with different timelines or different backgrounds? And you can even have a meeting with them directly and ask them how they support students. How do they support students in rebuilding momentum, especially as they have had to navigate transitions like finding a new advisor? What does accountability look like for them based on their advising style? That's another good question to ask. And I think the last thing I want to say, because I've already talked about a lot of different things to consider, is that changing your advisor or choosing your advisor is a really big decision, and it has a lot to do with you and what works for you, not just what works for them. It's about alignment. It's about figuring out what you need most. And also, I want to remind you that you deserve to work with someone who is supportive. You deserve to work with someone who is kind. You deserve to work with someone who is respectful, not someone who is going to potentially harm you or make you push yourself to the extent where you are getting sick, burning out, or worse. So if you found this episode helpful, please, please, please share it with a friend, share it with your peers, share it with anyone who might be working with a difficult professor and considering working with someone else. Share it with anyone who you know is applying to graduate school soon and considering their choices and their options of programs and professors to work with. And yeah, if you're going through this process, please take it easy. I know it's a lot of work to find the right people, and I know that it is a very tedious process to gather all of this information. It's a lot of work at the forefront, but trust me that you're going to be so grateful to have done this on the back end once you're actually working with this person. Because this is the last thing I want to say right now, is that you can have a positive grad school experience. Just because so many of us didn't have a great grad school experience doesn't mean that you don't get to have a great grad school experience. I have worked with graduate students on both ends of the spectrum. Folks who have had a really, really rough, toxic, even traumatizing graduate school experience. And then folks on the other side of things who have brilliant, supportive, kind mentors. And having had that experience after grad school, having experienced what true mentorship, femtorship feels like, of someone who truly supports, backs up, sponsors, opens up opportunities for you, I wish that more of you had that. I really, really do. You deserve that. So please remember that as you're doing this work, okay? That's it for today. And as always, I'll talk to you all next time. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, here are 3 ways you can support the show. The first is to make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The second way is to get your copy of my free resource kit linked in my show notes. This kit includes tools, worksheets, and podcast playlists on all things grad school, productivity, and personal development. The third way to support my show is to follow me on social media. You can find me on Instagram with the handle @Grad School Femtoring and on LinkedIn by searching my name. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.